Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today, I wanted to talk about something that I see come up a lot in mostly hetero relationships, but certainly in other relationships as well. But the the incongruence of one person wanting physical connection and the other person wanting emotional connection, and them just not feeling connected because neither of their needs are getting met, and they keep going around and around and around. Because what happens when our needs aren't getting met is that resentment builds, and then we start withholding our own affection and attention, and so it snowballs and it becomes this big issue in a relationship. And so I want to tell a little story, and then I'll relate it to what I'm talking about a little later. You might not get it until a little later on, but bear with me. So I've told stories many times about the fact that my husband and I have been together for 30 years. So I was 19, almost 20 when I met him. No, I just turned 19. He was 20. So neither of us had a lot of experience or knowledge about how to make a relationship work, either from the physical standpoint or the emotional standpoint, because we were still so very young. And so we went to Montreal to work at a golf course, and we stayed in what like a staff housing situation. And so there was all kinds of other young couples in their 20s staying there as well. And some people came as couples like we did, and other people sort of met and hooked up there and, developed relationships once they got there. So there was a lot of relationships going on. And because our relationship was really like brand new, like we were only a few months in when we decided to embark on this journey and go back to Montreal where I had worked. And so we left Nova Scotia, we went to Montreal to work for the summer. So because we were so young and inexperienced, we didn't really, and think about when we were growing up too. So this would have been the early 90s. And so our ideas about relationships and sex in general was formed a lot by the movies and shows and whatnot that we were watching, which I don't have to tell you, we're pretty terrible now looking back, especially when it comes to these issues. So there wasn't a lot for us to draw on, and people just didn't talk about it, right? So it was like, it was kind of taboo. And so if you wanted to learn more or grow your knowledge, you had two choices. Because thinking back to like the internet was, it was just really starting to kind of pick up, and but this is back in flip phone days, right? So keep that in mind. So if you wanted to learn something, you either went to the library or you went to a bookstore. And so that's where I went, seeking knowledge from a self-help section of a bookstore, where I found a little gem of a book called Wild in Bed Together. Now, again, we were 19 and 20, so this was like, whoa, eye-opening, really informative, well-written, easy to understand, and it really allowed us to have conversations that were really uncomfortable and we didn't have the language for until we were reading this book together, and we were having conversations and we were exploring and trying new things and talking about what felt good and what didn't and all that good stuff. So, of course, living and working together with all of these other people, we're talking amongst our friend groups and whatnot, and we're sharing some of this stuff. And so this book left my hands, mine and Donnie's hands, and it went on a journey. I don't know where it ended up, but I'm pretty sure 2 or 3 couples got to read it that summer. I don't know. And hopefully it continued on. But I share this because very early on in our relationship, we felt like this wasn't something that was going to be an issue for us because of this open communication and this willingness to talk about different things and learn different things together. So when life happens, as it often does, that throws obstacles in your way that make intimacy challenging, i.e., work obligations, stress, raising children, the busyness of those younger years, all of that, right? Really, it kind of goes against that, ability to find time for physical intimacy, but it also erodes the emotional intimacy. And so while you're busy with all of these external things, if you're not emotionally connecting, that's going to have an adverse effect on the connection that you're going to have in the bedroom. I mean, it just all is so connected, right? So if you've got one person in the relationship who really, really needs that emotional connection in order to open up and feel free to explore and engage in the erotic and the physical connection with their partner, and the other person is maybe the complete opposite and is looking for that physical connection to feel that emotional connection, then you're gonna start butting heads, right? And this is what was happening with Donnie and I, because although we had the language for physical connection in those conversations, we didn't have the language for the emotional connections. And so we had to explore that. And the tough conversations that need to be had in a relationship, whether it's about sex, money, child raising, any number of things that come up in the course of a long-term relationship, those tough conversations are tougher to have if neither of you have done the work that you need to do. So you're not dragging all of your emotional baggage and unhealed wounds into these conversations, right? So me needing that emotional connection would learn this, new tool of like, oh, I need to use I feel statements and really change the way that I frame it. Well, so when I go to Donnie to say, I feel, X, Y, and Z, and, I'm putting it on him to solve that, and he's sitting there going, well, I feel X, Y, and Z about this. And so we're both expressing that we're feeling these needs, unmet needs. But then how do you take it that one step further? It's about that safety and connection and groundedness of your relationship that needs to be there. That foundation of trust needs to be there in order to have those conversations. But also, you both need to bring to the table an ability to sit with uncomfortableness, to hear the other person express their needs without becoming defensive, without being triggered, which is really, really, really tough. And it's not something that I can say that I've always been able to do. Really, it's only been in the last probably 5, 6 years, that I really felt that shift in my own ability to stay grounded and really anchored in myself and to know what's being triggered inside of me. And that took a lot of work on my own in therapy to get there. And then I was, of course, introduced to counseling hypnosis, which was like, I kind of consider it like I was doing the steps along the way, and it was a slow journey. And what I needed was a big shift in order to really change how I was reacting and acting in my relationships. And once that shift happened, all of the slow learning that I was doing along the way, all of that became so much more available and usable in my day-to-day life, right? So we keep applying these skills that we learn, which are amazing. And I'm not knocking, CBT and DBT skills. I think they are amazing skills that everyone should learn, because they'll help you on your growth journey and help you to get more grounded. But without that catalyst, or that shift, that big shift, without that, those things almost become like band-aids in your life. And so over time, what happens is, if we don't address those bigger issues, the things that are really holding us back, it's almost like every time life throws something at us, which it will, we don't have the resilience to deal with it, because we're still sort of band-aiding all of these little wounds and little cuts. And so over time, we just don't have that capacity to weather the storms. And that's when we reach our breaking point and the burnout point, right? So that's either on an individual level, or on a relationship level, or a career level, parenting. So in all areas of our lives, we can experience this feeling or this sensation of just complete burnout and exhaustion. And it's because we've used up all of the energy that we had just sort of trying to hold ourselves together, that is being sucked out of us because we're still holding on to these wounds, and we're sort of dragging them around with us, and it's a weight that we can't carry and continue to build resilience in our life. And so if you're in a relationship and you're butting heads, and both of you, and maybe you're realizing and recognizing that, oh, they're needing this, which is different from what I'm needing, how can I better understand their side of it? How can I bring that curiosity and openness to the discussions? And if you keep kind of butting up against your own triggers, well, I feel this way about it, and I have unmet needs too, and I need this and I need that, and they're not doing this for me, and they're not. If you're still kind of stuck in that space, it's hard for you, it's going to be impossible for you both to come together and start working together towards meeting each other's needs, right? Because we're just so focused. We get focused on what we're not getting and what they're not providing for us, that we lose the ability to approach these situations with that inner calm and that peace, or at least the ability to recognize that, okay, things are getting unproductive or heated. Let's step away from it. Let's take a break, regroup, do some, contemplation and thinking about what we really want and what we're working towards here as a couple, right? If you're stuck in a place where you haven't address those unmet needs within yourself and those wounds that you're still carrying, it's going to be really hard to be there sitting across from your partner and not feel triggered and not feel defensive. And I totally get that. Donnie and I were in that space for so long, and we had this foundation of trust. We had the foundation of safety in a lot of areas, but the emotional side, the emotional piece was still lacking. And so we had to do the work together and individually to be able to actually really focus on what's important to us as a couple, as a family, right? What are we really trying to build here? Why are we fighting? We need to be working together, right? How can we work together? I can only see his side of things if I'm not embroiled in my own stuff. And the way that I'm no longer embroiled in my own stuff is because I'm no longer holding on to those things, those beliefs, those mindsets that were keeping me stuck in that place. where I couldn't hear what he was saying, right? I was just so all up in my head and in my heart and in my body too, right? So that I couldn't be there for him to hear him. And so until I could do that, and until he could do the same for me, we just kept butting heads about things that we shouldn't have really even been butting heads about, right? That we kind of naively thought that we wouldn't be butting heads about, and there we were, right? So these things happen in a relationship because you go into it thinking that, you are going to just be there for each other for everything. And what you'll realize, hopefully, is that we're not meant to rely on just one person to meet all of our needs. And so if there's some emotional needs that you need met, yes, of course they need to meet them on on a certain level. Of course, that's expected, and you shouldn't settle for less. However, it's important to not put all of it on them, right? So that we have community and we have people in our lives that meet other needs for us as well. And so, again, I go back to the fact that it was really hard for me personally to reach out to other people and have meaningful conversations about what was going on in my life because I was carrying so much shame and I was blaming myself and just feeling like I couldn't share those things because then if I did, then people would look at me differently and think that I was a failure, right? And, nobody wants to feel like that. But once you've sort of dealt with that internal stuff within you, it does become easier to reach out to people and to form more meaningful connections. And so a lot of my clients come to me for something that they would like to change in their lives. And what they recognize is that once they've unlocked that box, that, untied the knot, whatever metaphor that you want to use, once they've discovered what was really, really at the root of their pain and their suffering, then it's like a domino effect and it unravels so much so that everything else becomes richer and deeper. And so our connections with our loved ones can become deeper. And that's because we're getting more grounded in ourselves and we're becoming more authentic in our relationships. And so that's sort of a byproduct of some of the work that we do. So I have people who will come to me for relationship burnout, but I also will have people who will reach out and be like, hey, I know you do counseling hypnosis. Could you help me with weight loss? Or could you help me with stop smoking? And I'm like, of course. Let's sit down and have a talk. And what happens in our sessions is that we start off maybe talking about that, but then through the process, we recognize that that was just a symptom of something deeper. And the deeper thing was actually related to usually a connection or an attachment need or a wound, right? So then once we unravel that, then it's like, well, yeah, we took care of the smoking thing because that was just a symptom of this bigger thing. But then, all of a sudden we unravel all of these other things that were sort of tied to that issue, that core thing. And once we blew that out, it was like, it has like a domino effect. So if you're feeling that way and you're feeling like you don't know how to change your connections with people, you'd like to have deeper connections with your spouse or with your kids or your loved ones or your friends, and you're struggling because, there's something holding you back. Maybe it's, you're feeling anxious and stressed all the time. Maybe it's feeling exhausted and depleted. Then, unraveling that can have a profound effect on your life. So if that's you, please feel free to reach out to me. You can private message me through Messenger. You can email me at stephsuggestion4 lowercase u at gmail.com. Steph's suggestion for you at gmail.com. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Please try to bring some compassion and openness to your interactions with any other beings that you come in contact with today. Thank you and namaste.